Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome to episode 21 of the Slouching towards Thatcham Parenting Podcast, the first edition of 2016. Every week a fellow parents blogger and I each talk about and read one of our favourite posts, bringing bite-sized chunks of blogging brilliance to your ears, just like one of those Taylor Swift songs that you can't stop humming along to. This week, I'm delighted to be joined by Al from the Dad Network. Good evening, Al.
Hi, Tim.
So, just to start with, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your family?
Fab. Okay, so I am 27 years old and I've got 3 children. I've got a little boy called Ted, who's 16 months. I've got a daughter who's 3, and I've got a stepson who's 11, and we all live in Kent with my wife as well, Jen, who I love very much. I'm a teacher, primary school teacher as well, so that keeps me busy during the day, and then in the evenings I blog.
Cool. So the Dad Network is a blog dedicated to the art of fatherhood, but it's more than just a blog, isn't it? It's a community for dads in general, and you've also made a number of appearances on behalf of brands and in the media. So can you just tell us a little bit more about how all that came about?
It's a bizarre one, really, because it all kind of just fell onto my lap in a way. I started the blog really as a personal story a place where I could just share my thoughts and my feelings, particularly on some things that had been happening in my life, which we'll come on to later, I think. And so, it was a personal place for me to write. And then suddenly people started to read it, and I was a little shocked by that. But as more and more people started to read it, it encouraged me to write more, and then it slowly grew. One of our articles, which I'll share later, was about miscarriage, and we started having some dads get in touch with us and asking just about our experience, and really kind of wanting just someone to talk to about miscarriage and other things that kind of go with parenting as well. So it kind of struck us that actually there's a real need for a place for dads to speak to other dads about whatever they want. It could be something, serious like miscarriage, or it could be something about they just want to chat with another dad rather than their 2-year-old for a change. So the community surrounding the Dad Network really kind of organically just happened from there, really. So then we built that in and now got nearly 2,000 dads as part of the network, which is a fabulous group. I mean, it's so supportive and so encouraging, and I'm really privileged just to be part of that. But then, like you say, we've also had appearances in magazines. We worked with Channel 4 on a documentary that was going alongside One Born Every Minute. And we've worked with some brands doing about weaning and different videos and different articles for different brands and things. And that's just kind of come with it as the Dad Network has grown. They've got in touch and wanted to work with us. So, really honoured to do those kinds of things, and we enjoy it. So, it's just grown quite organically, really.
So we're recording this episode just a few days into 2016. So have you got any big plans for where you want to take the Dad Network this year?
Well, it's a funny one again, but I don't sit here thinking I've got so many, wonderful big ideas for 2016. Other than the fact that I just want the Dad Network to continue being a resource and a support to dads. That's the purpose behind it. That's why it's developed into what it is. And so the more dads we can reach, and the more dads that can kind of get value from it, then the better. We recently kind of asked all the dads in the network where they are located in the UK. And it's interesting to see sort of where people are. And so we're going to begin a Dad Network kind of local meetup. So rather than have a virtual meeting place, we're also going to arrange for dads to get together in real life as well and make friends, really. That's really the purpose, just to make friends. So that's starting in January, end of January, in a couple of locations. So, that's quite exciting, and looking forward to seeing how that unfolds, really.
Oh, that's great, and something really to look forward to. So today, you've already touched on it a little bit, but you're going to be reading a post that provides a rare perspective on one of the great taboo subjects of parenting. So can you just give us a little bit of background to that?
That's right, yeah. So my wife and I had a miscarriage under quite extraordinary circumstances, and it was really as a result of that experience that I turned to blogging. to kind of let out my emotions and my feelings about it. And it is a taboo. There's not many dads that I think talk about it, despite the fact that 1 in 5 dads will have experienced it in some way. So it's, the statistics are quite high, but we don't talk about it. I don't know why. I felt much better after I started talking about it, and I know the testimonies of other dads that have got in touch with us, and they felt a lot better as a result of them talking about it. So, that is one thing that we are trying to do. We are trying to break that taboo.
Okay, so in that case, let me just hand the reins over to you. So this is Al reading the story of a dad's miscarriage.
Miscarriage is a mysterious and devastating thing. I don't think dads talk about their experience of miscarriage enough, and they should. They should, because it's real, it's very common, and it helps to talk about it. So here is the story of this dad's miscarriage. My wife and I had planned to get pregnant and could not have been happier when we saw the 2 blue lines. But during week 6, the storm began when my wife found a small amount of blood. We quickly Googled and found out about spotting, common, perfectly normal bleeding during early pregnancy. We put it down to this, but the doctor still booked an appointment at the emergency scan department of the hospital. This was a weird place. We were sitting in a corridor opposite the sonographer's room. Women and couples go into the room with an anxious look on their face and come out either crying or gleefully holding a baby scan picture. We sat there and wondered our fate, overjoyed or distraught. We ended up feeling neither. The sonographer examined and came to the conclusion that it was too early to tell, booking us in for another emergency scan in 2 weeks' time. That way the heartbeat would definitely be seen, or not. This time, the fetus had grown, but there was still no visible heartbeat. No one could explain it, and no one could confirm viability either way. We epitomised the saying, left hanging. We lived the following weeks on edge, anxious, worried and pensive. All the while this was happening, we were planning for our wedding for the end of the summer. What should have been an exciting time of preparations was overcast by a huge cloud of uncertainty and potential devastation. Just before our pre-wedding honeymoon was our 3rd scan. Still no heartbeat, but more growth. The doctor said because of the growth, she couldn't definitively say to us that we would lose the baby. Instead, she gave a 95% chance of miscarriage at any point. So what should we do? Miss our holiday and lose the money, or go and risk it? We decided to go, but all the while our thoughts were elsewhere. On our return, general wedding stress levels were non-existent. The Tuesday before the wedding saw us yet again in the emergency scan room, waiting for our 4th scan. We hid ourselves from the others, knowing that it would more than likely be bad news. This time there was still no heartbeat, but also no growth. We were told it was just a matter of time before the body rejected the unviable fetus and the miscarriage began. We had 2 options. 1, let the miscarriage happen naturally over the wedding, or 2, opt for the surgical management of miscarriage and cancel the wedding. Ever been between a rock and a hard place? We decided to crack on with the wedding, and if the miscarriage started, we'd cross that bridge as and when. It put everything into perspective. It helps us focus on us, and ironically, in amongst the sadness, we had never been so close. We got married with such an intimacy between us. 3 days after the wedding, the miscarriage started. It began as a pain in the stomach. She knew it was happening, so we called for our 5th emergency appointment. The bleeding was constant, and she had continuous pain. What could I do to make it better? The helpless feeling of inadequacy was fraught and very real. 7 weeks of uncertainty, hope and despair had come to an end. We booked in for an emergency SMM. We arrived at the hospital and got prepped for the procedure. It was gut-wrenching as they wheeled my wife out the room. I felt like my heart was being pulled out on a trolley too. I couldn't be with her when she was terrified. I wanted to comfort her, hold her hand and be there for her. Instead, I was in a cold room with just my thoughts as company. Following the procedure, it was so hard to know how to be. I was devastated but held it in. I wanted to be strong and look after my wife as I knew that she was already heartbroken. Me crying would just add to that pain for her. This was a mistake. The moment I let my guard down and really showed how I was feeling through being honest led to one of the best moments of our relationship. We both held each other and felt the pain together. I think it was that moment that a new, unspoken connection and bond between us grew. It is in these difficult, overcast situations that relationships can really develop, and for that I am thankful.
Thanks, Al. And miscarriage is such a traumatic experience for any couple to go through, and I think you're absolutely right. Although it's far from uncommon, it's something that's very rarely talked about openly, and particularly from a dad's perspective and the emotional impact that it has on both sides of the relationship, which makes it all the more important, I think, for people like yourself to share stories like this.
Absolutely, yeah. There is this, there's this stereotype of dads not wanting to share any of their emotions, and obviously, a miscarriage is the type of experience that stirs up plenty of emotions, and I think that dads, we're not immune from feeling those emotions, and so the best thing that I did, and the best thing that I could ever advise anyone in the situation to do, would be to share those emotions with someone close to them. Probably their partner, but even if it wasn't, a close friend or family member, because just lets it out.
Yeah, so absolutely, and thank you so much for taking the time to share what's clearly been a very cathartic story for you, and also one that's invaluable for all dads and parents everywhere. So thanks very much for taking the time to join me on this week's podcast.
No problem. Thank you very much for having me.
If you want to read more of Al's writing, go to thedadnetwork.co.uk or follow him on Twitter at thedadnetworkuk. I'll attach blog and social media links on the show notes over on slouchingtowardsthatcham.com. As Al mentioned, in addition to being a dad and the driving force behind the Dad Network, he's also a teacher. Now, we have several friends who are teachers, and of course we frequently come into contact with the boys' teachers at school, not least during their twice-yearly parents' evenings. Over the past few years, we've come to understand the hidden meaning behind the gently diplomatic things that teachers say at these events. So here's a quick guide that I wrote back in October to explain some of the things that teachers tell parents. 10 things teachers say, and what they actually mean. Another October, another parents' evening. I'll admit that these don't hold much fear for us these days. Both Isaac and Toby received achievement awards at the end of the last school year, so we're pretty relaxed on that front. Sure enough, both boys' teachers had glowing reports about their academic progress, with Isaac, who's not yet 8, apparently having the spelling ability expected of a 12-and-a-half-year-old. I think that means he's proficient in text speak or something like that. Without wishing to sound blasé about it, the two most interesting things about Parents' Evening for me are 1. Can I get through the whole of a 10-minute meeting while perching on a tiny child's chair without it breaking underneath me? Now, I weigh 16.5 stone and have a bad history with bar stools, so it's a genuine concern. And 2. Translating what teachers say into what they actually mean. Let me explain. While Isaac's comments were fairly unambiguous, when the first word a teacher says to you is "wow," you know you're onto a winner. Toby, despite receiving generally positive comments, was also described as a bit stubborn, which is teacher code for stomps his foot a lot when he doesn't get his own way, or what in our household is known as situation normal. I've written about other examples of teacher code in a previous post about parents' evenings, but, with tongue firmly inserted in cheek, here are 10 more I've picked up over the years. I've used male pronouns only for convenience. 1. I've been looking forward to meeting you, which means, boy, have I got a lot of things about your devil-spawned child that I've been saving up to talk to you about. 2. He's comfortable in his own company, isn't he? Which means he's an antisocial git. 3. He can find it difficult to make friends, which means all the other children hate him. 4. He tends to form very close friendships, doesn't he? Now this is code for another child's parents have threatened to take out a restraining order if he ever comes within 5 metres of their child again. 5. He would benefit from a more consistent approach to his personal hygiene, which means, didn't you ever teach him to wipe his bottom? 6. He can be quite competitive, can't he? This translates to, he cries when he loses and runs around chanting na 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 when he wins. 7. He needs to take a little more care with his spelling, which means he's illiterate. 8. We think he's well suited to academic pursuits. Now this is a well-meaning way of saying he can't throw, can't catch, and can't kick, and he has about as much chance of becoming the next David Beckham or Usain Bolt as I have of becoming Prime Minister. 9. I see where he gets it from. Now this admonition really means, so it's your fault he has all these bad habits. And finally 10. He's a free-spirited soul, isn't he? Now this means, just one time I wish the little sod would actually listen to anything I say. Someone really ought to provide parents with a dictionary, shouldn't they? And that's it for this episode of the Slouching Towards Thatcham podcast. If you'd like to listen to either future or previous episodes, you'll find them published on the blog, and also on iTunes and various other podcasting sites. You can follow me on the blog at slouchingtowardsthatcham.com, on Twitter at ThatchamDad, and on various other social media channels. You'll find links to all of the above, plus Al's links, in the show notes on the blog. All that remains for me is to say thank you all for listening to this podcast, and hopefully you'll join me again next week. Until then, goodbye.